On this episode of the Sacred Playgrounds podcast, we've got some scary stuff to share from camp. Welcome to the Sacred Playgrounds podcast, where we turn numbers into stories and data into insights. We dive deep into theology and research, paired with practical wisdom and action steps to help camping ministries thrive. I'm your host and producer, Jared Rendell, a camp enthusiast and part of the Sacred Playgrounds team. This podcast features Dr. Jake Sorensen, a scholar, author, practitioner, and the founder of Sacred Playgrounds. Be sure to subscribe, submit a question to us to be featured on the podcast, and click that support button to help make these episodes happen. Find us on Facebook and Instagram at Sacred Playgrounds or at sacredplaygrounds.com. Wonder with us what God might have in store at your Sacred Playground. Hey, welcome to the playground, everyone. Oh, wait. Welcome to the playground.
No, come on. You got to do better than that.
Spooky
Welcome
enough?
to the playground.
Gosh.
I
believe you is the
doesn't
problem.
it? Wow. Yeah. We got to fix that. Edit that out, would you?
Yeah, we'll figure that out. I won't. No, officially.
Of course not. Of course not. Yeah.
Welcome to the playground, everybody. We're being a little spooky, right? Because it's right around Halloween time, and sometimes we have some fun with these holidays. Some of these kind of seasonal episodes have been some of our favorite to do, like the New Year's episodes and
Thanksgiving,
things like that. So Thanksgiving,
yep,
yeah,
all the holidays, man. All the holidays.
Fans,
and not everybody celebrates Halloween in the same way, and
true,
it's an important part of many cultures.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about the realm of the dead and, the Dia de los Muertos and in Latin America.
Truth.
And I mean, it's from All Hallows Eve, right? It's the day before All Saints Day, and kind of remembering those who have passed on and not being afraid of death. There's something that we Christians can at least take from that of
truth.
Be not afraid, even in the face of death, or maybe especially in the face of death. And we've got all these traditions of, I don't know, did your church ever do Holy Humor Sunday in the Sunday after Easter?
We did.
Where Jesus gets the last laugh on the devil.
Right.
So
we happened to have a like 3 or 4 of our church members were in like a local clowning club, and then they kind of did it as a clowning ministry too. So they always helped come up with and run that service.
Love it.
It was great.
Love it. Yeah, clowning ministry is really interesting. If people are not familiar with clowning ministry, it's a very specific type of ministry that can be really interesting and powerful. And so anyway, it's not like ha funny generally. And we used to do that at camp. That was a big thing in like the 90s and 2000s, wasn't it?
It was. Yeah, we did. One of our dramas was this clowning themed, and it was deep. It was deep. It was meaningful. All right, everyone. So we've got some scary stuff to share from camp today. I mean, scary is kind of in quotation marks, but we're actually going to get a little real too at the same time.
Is it in quotation marks or is it in scare quotes?
That's right. Good grief. Love it. Well done. Well done. All right. So that's our plan. We have 3 things. So we're going to share a scary story, a scary truth, and a scary stat. And we'll unpack that here in a second. However, we're going to start with our quick camp question.
Quick camp question.
Quick camp question for the week is this: favorite scary movie? Bonus points if you watched it at camp, or because maybe, we staff get weekends off, summer staff.
Oh, this is great.
I lived on site for a while.
So many scary movies are actually set at camp,
Lots.
So we could even do your favorite scary movie set at camp.
Set at a camp? Oh, that would have been a good idea. If yours happens to be, good job.
Yeah, like some of them are really bad and corny or even campy, you might say, the ones that are set at camp. But
Truth.
my favorite scary movie of all time. I'm sort of a traditionalist here, and The Exorcist is just such a fantastic movie, and it's so deep and interesting, and it's shot so well. I love the visuals of it, and it's freaks me out even thinking about it right now. This thing, it was really well done. So I'm gonna go with that as my top, like, overall. I also like the different genres of scary movies, and so, you know, like if I did a sci-fi one, it's probably Alien, the original Alien. I loved that one. And then if you do comedy horror, Shaun of the Dead. If you haven't seen that, that's my favorite zombie movie.
I've heard it's really
it's fantastic. Yeah, Simon Pegg is a genius, and it's really well done.
He's funny.
So anyway, what's your favorite scary movie, Jared?
I'll hit two genres with you. One that is classic, Silence of the Lambs.
Silence of the Lambs. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Right.
Excellent
movie. A little less jump scare. And I actually really like Halloween, and, you know, some of those just classic, you know, there's multiples of them. I, in high school, would just, like, nobody else liked them, but I would watch, you know, Halloween night, they're on, I would watch by myself. I kind of like those too. But Silence of the Lambs, again, for like the depth and the quality of that movie, was incredible. More recently, the more recent one that I actually hadn't seen, like, I wasn't on the bandwagon, and I still have to see the others, but I finally saw A Quiet Place.
Oh, I haven't seen it yet.
And I hadn't seen that yet, and it's really good.
Pretty good, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
See,
John Krasinski and Emily Blunt, they are very good.
My challenge is, like, I grew up watching scary movies and loved them and loved getting scared.
Sure.
And my wife, Anna, does not appreciate scary movies. And so we generally do not select that as a genre. And so a lot of the newer ones I haven't seen. So there's probably a lot of new ones that I'm just not watching. Although, you know, my brother, who does film and he makes short films and stuff, you know, so we've entered scary movies several times in the Wisconsin Horror Film Festival, and that's been fun. And so we just filmed one a few weeks ago, and so I get to participate in his projects. And so I do enjoy the genre, and think it's fun, and think, you know, anyway.
Awesome.
That's probably enough time for that.
Drop yours in the comments, everybody, if you've got one. Again, bonus points if you watch it at camp or have a story around it at camp. But that's our quick camp question. All right, here we go. Like I said, we're going to approach this in kind of three chunks. The first is kind of a scary story. Jake, I'll let you know kind of where this comes from, because this is real. This is a real story. This really happened just this last summer. All of these sections, they kind of have something to teach us, something to remind us, something for us to, you know, maybe even take some action on, do something about. So we've got a scary story to share. Jake.
Okay. So, I mean, a couple things here. So, like, I wanted to actually share a couple things, because I think there's a specific topic that it's been on my mind a lot. And so I'm going to share a quick story from a visit I had to a camp where it was Thursday night. It was the last night of camp. You know, worship got done at like 8:30 or 9 o'clock. And everybody, I was like, okay, what's next? Where's the campfire? What's going on? And people are like, people are just going to bed. And I was like, what? That doesn't seem right. And so I started taking a walk around, and it's dark, you know, and campers are out and about doing different things. And I got invited to a cabin group that was having another cabin group over, and they were having like a little party in the cabin, and that was kind of fun. And so they had two cabin groups together, and we were hanging out, and I noticed that some of the people had left during that time. And as I kind of headed outside and found somebody keeping watch, and says, who goes there? And they were keeping watch for the other cabin group, because while that cabin group was at their cabin for a party, some of the other guys went to that group's cabin to prank them. And it was a fairly innocent one as far as pranks go. It was like they spooned the cabin. They put spoons everywhere in the cabin. Ha ha ha.
Sure.
But it was also sort of like, it felt a little deceptive. And I was like, what are we teaching these kids on the last night of camp when, we're inviting them over and we're kind of having this trust built, and then we violate that trust by going inside their cabin. And it was sort of like, okay, as far as pranks go, is that big a deal? But then I went up and went to bed that night, and I heard a noise outside my window. And I said, what could that noise be? And there was banging on the window downstairs in the building that I was staying at. I was like, what in the world is going on? And I opened the window, and there was some screaming and there was some yelling. I was like, okay, something happened, right? I find out the next day that this group of boys had decided to come and, wake some people up, bang on some doors, and they were going to come to the building to upstairs where I was staying. But because I was there, they didn't want to scare people up there because I might hear it and find out. So they kind of knew they were doing something that they shouldn't. And they ended up going to like a random window and banging on the window. And it was a girls' cabin group. And it really freaked them out. And I've heard this at camps before where people think that they're doing a funny prank, and it's something like banging on the girls' cabins or banging on the other boys' cabins or something like that. And, somebody's changing at that time. And it really is super uncomfortable, and it feels like a violation in a lot of ways. And so I've come to really despise pranks, and these sorts of things just confirmed it. And so there was actually a parent survey this year. So we surveyed parents this year, and we got over 2,000 responses from parents at a whole bunch of different camps, a couple dozen camps.
Right.
This parent says, my son came home exhausted, clearly had a great time, but didn't seem to connect with Jesus at all during camp and had no interest in talking about it. His focus was 100% on pranking other cabins, including drawing a penis on a kid who fell asleep early and pooping in a jar and leaving it in someone else's cabin. He couldn't remember a single scripture the counselors brought up, didn't learn any songs, didn't crack open his journal. I asked him about it when the morning worship times, and he said that they made up chants. I asked what they were, and he said he probably shouldn't tell me because they weren't appropriate. I'm so sad about this. Feels like a missed opportunity.
Wow.
A missed opportunity indeed. This is what the parent hears about. They want to hear about their kid having fun, and it's like, okay, you had fun, that's great, but you had fun drawing genitalia on somebody's face while they were sleeping, and like what was it like for that kid?
Sure. Right.
What was it like for the cabin group that found a jar of poop in their cabin? I mean, whenever we do pranks, somebody always has to take it to the next level.
Right. Yeah. They're inevitably escalating.
Yep.
Right.
That's just what happens with adolescents and with young adults, right? You have 19, 20, 21-year-olds. Let's get them back. Let's do something even more epic. Or we did this last week. Let's go to the next level. And it always gets escalated to the point where it is totally out of bounds and totally
until that
inappropriate.
happens. That's the thing. Yes. Like until someone gets hurt or something gets genuinely broken or some actual trust gets violated, they almost never stop until that happens.
And so I have heard horror story after horror story about camp pranks. And I have been involved or been on the receiving end or observed camp pranks. And some of them are like, you just kind of roll your eyes and say, ha, 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 ha. But not everybody's able to do that. And especially when camp is supposed to be this safe space. I go away to camp. I expect it to be this safe space. I might be getting picked on in other places. This is the one place I can feel like I'm not getting picked on. And so maybe every other kid in the cabin is able to laugh it off. And to me, It feels like just more of the same. I'm just being targeted again. And I'm the one who got, a penis written on my face while I was sleeping. Like it's just so mean, and it's not funny. And people think it's funny, and camp counselors often think it's funny, and sometimes our camp program directors and directors think it's funny, and think it builds community and things like that. Right. And it's kind of the
it's
hazing.
It's part of bringing the group in, right? All those excuses when
you're one of us,
hazing word or whatever.
Right? We do this because you're one of us, and we're happy that you're here and things like that. But if it doesn't feel that way, if it just feels like I'm being made fun of and picked on, just like I get picked on in other places, that's a violation of the safe space of camp. I went to a camping conference once, Jared, and it was when I was a program director down at Sugar Creek, and I went to the Mid-States ACA conference, and one of the workshops was on pranks, and I was like, oh, they're going to tell us, why pranks are bad or how to do them taste. No, the whole thing was how to come up with great pranks and prank other cabins. Like, here's a great example, and I sat there the whole time just horrified. And that's why I'm doing this on the Halloween episode, because I really think it's horrific that we think it's okay and we think it's funny. And there might be some people listening to this and say, oh, but we make sure our people don't go too far.
I'm sure.
You know what I say to that? You don't have a clue. You don't know what's going on because they're keeping it from you. There is inevitably someone going too far and then not reporting it to you, the director or the program director, or you hear it once and you think, oh, that's an isolated incident. It's not. 1, 2, 10 kids. How many kids does it take to have a really bad experience like this for you to say, you know what, we shouldn't do this anymore? It's a safety issue. Sometimes it's physical safety, right? And sometimes it's emotional and spiritual safety. So, and property, exactly. So this is something that, again, I find horrific. And if you're not horrified by the story of poop in a jar and a kid getting a penis drawn on his face at a Christian camp,
you probably should be.
Maybe you haven't encountered very many kids that have really, really been hurt by some targeted of these like things.
That. Take that. I agree. Man, you're right. Right. We've seen it over and over again, and I'm sure most of the directors listening to this are nodding their heads. And the culture that you create space for, the culture that you create, and how that happens should be intentional. We've talked a lot about staff culture, staff community, and what that takes. And this is not on the list of things that it takes to create that staff community, and definitely not because we had. I think I've even shared on here before. Like we had a staff prank where that happened one of my summers, and again, same thing, didn't stop. Even to the point of the defecation in the box in this case. And I remember, observing that and sort of being on the outskirts of this group of guys who was doing that. And I really should have paid attention to my gut, because I remember the feeling in my gut, like, oh, this is too far. And I didn't do a thing about it. So, because it is, and especially this next chunk we're going to talk about, it's connected. It comes off of that, right? If you got campers that are feeling like that, if they're feeling like their safe space breaks down, that's not a good thing on their brain. And whether it's campers or whether it's staff, we've talked a lot about on this podcast about mental health, and we know the realities of mental health and how the prevalence of bullying, right? We've had an episode on that, lots of that. And so that kind of leads us into this next chunk where the scary, we'll call it in this case, the scary truth is that our campers and our staff members are still and continue to deal with a crisis of mental health. In the world, in the United States in particular, we're in a crisis of mental health, and that's kind of the scary truth to move to this section that we're talking about today.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, but it's as we say, okay, we're going to theme an episode on frightening things. This is something that should really be sobering for all of us as we think about some of these recent statistics and what we've seen in front of us, right? We know, we see it, we've experienced it with the kids that we work with, that there are more concerns of youth mental health and young adult mental health. And to see some of the stats, to put some numbers on it, I encourage you guys to go to cdc.gov. They've got mental health stats and on all sorts of different demographic groups, including on children. And so just looking at adolescents, among U.S. adolescents aged 12 to 17 in the years 2021 and 2022, so this is post-pandemic, 21% reported symptoms of anxiety in the past 2 weeks. 17% reported symptoms of depression in the past 2 weeks, right? So 1 in 5 kids, anxiety, depression. Now in 2023, so just last year, that's the most recent numbers that we've got from the CDC, among US high school students, 40%, so 2 out of every 5, reported persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness in the past year. And 20%, 1 in 5, reported seriously considering suicide. So these are super sobering statistics.
Truthfully scary.
There's so many different ways that we can parse the data and look at different stats. These are just a few things, right? We know that many of these things go undiagnosed, and the ones that are showing signs of depression and anxiety in particular, it's about half of them are receiving treatment, and about half aren't. And so this is something to consider as well, is that not everybody who needs the help is getting the help.
I saw some stuff about how much of it goes untreated.
Yeah.
There was another recent one. I'll see if I can pull it up. But just like that one, brought another level to the scariness for me. Is like, and the help's not there. It's available,
right,
but it's not happening. They're not getting it. They're not either seeking it or they're not getting connected in the way that they need to be.
And so our camps are really places that need to be aware of this. One, so awareness. It starts with awareness, right? That this is a problem, and it's an increasing problem. It's not a problem that's going away. It's a problem that's getting worse, and there's a lot of explanation for why this might be the case, right? One, our political climate is terrible right now, and it creates mental health difficulties. Two, kids are getting outside and moving less than they were in the past. That contributes because nature is healing, movement is healing. Three, they're spending more time online, and so that can contribute to mental health challenges because they're not spending as much time in person, things like that. So there's all sorts of things that are contributing to these things and to the mental health crisis. We need to be aware of it at camp because it matters for the behavior of the kids. It matters for how we work with them. And so one of the initiatives that we at Sacred Playgrounds have really leaned into is the Campwell program and the Campwell initiative. And so that's something that the American Camp Association and the Alliance for Camp Health have partnered on. And we've been able to be on board to talk about what it means for spiritual health. But it's not just spiritual health. It's emotional health. It's physical health. It's psychological health. It's emotional health. It's environmental health. So there's this wellness wheel. And really Campwell tries to lean into how can we create a culture and system of well-being at our camps, and there are specific ways that we can do that. And so, really, really important stuff. And that's a great initiative to really seek to address some of these things in a very fundamental way, because it's the same things that keep us continuing the pranks. So it's like, yeah, in the 50s and 60s, we thought that was funny. And we thought if you couldn't handle it, that's just your problem. And, just take a joke, something like that. Right. And it's the same thing with some of these mental health things. People don't want to talk about it because they think that they're going to be made fun of, be excluded. They think that something's wrong with them, that they shouldn't be having these feelings, that it's just a me thing. And so it's now coming to the fore much more. And that's
people
really
are trying
important.
to normalize it. But
that's exactly right. And we need to normalize it. We need to talk about it. We need to give permission for people to talk about these things and to not be scared about sharing them.
Yeah. I always have felt like, one of the things that camps have done end of camp surveys. How'd camp go for ages and ages and ages. One of the things I've always loved about effective camp in the process is this in the full kind of project is this 3-step thing, right? So we survey them on the way in, we survey them on the way out, and then a couple months after. And of course, we, that way out, how did camp go? We want to hear that. And even a couple months after, are things lasting? Of course, that's a question we want to answer. That's what we're there for. As I have looked at the data myself, and if I were a camp director going back, and I would find one of the most valuable things is that first day survey. For you to know where people are coming from makes such a big difference. Agreed. And when they feel, to the questions that we ask, right, they feel picked on at home, right? Or they feel like they have to hide their true selves is a way that we ask that question a lot of times. If they feel like they have to hide their true selves at home, and that 2 out of the 2 out of the 5, 4 out of the 10 campers that are going to be in that cabin are feeling like that, oh my gosh, the space you can create in there for some openness about that and for some healing around that is incredible. That's and right. Now you're going somewhere. You're going deep. You're going somewhere real. And you're connecting Jesus and inviting Jesus into those spaces. And there. Now we're on point with our mission.
And what we know about that, and we see it over and over again, year after year, and again this year, that those that come in with those feelings, like I get picked on or left out at school or home, or I have to hide my true self at home, they're more likely to have those feelings at camp. And so how can we create a safe space for us to really see these folks and not belittle people that just can't handle a prank or can't handle a joke, things like that?
Sure.
We have to create these safe spaces. So these two scary things that we're just talking about, they really do go together.
Yeah, they really do. And the reality is you actually already keyed into our third one. So let's move there. So this is kind of our scary stat section, right? We had sort of a scary story, told you a scary truth. This is kind of the scary stat section here. You had mentioned, as you were talking about that, one of the factors that we know is contributing to this is around our time online, our tech, and even particularly our social media use in those adolescents, that age group that you mentioned especially, right? We know social media use and time online, time behind screens, tech use on adolescents is of course way up, and again not going down. We continue to see increasing numbers of a lower percentage are spending 3 more hours outside, and a higher percentage are spending 3 more hours online, and we keep seeing that.
Yeah.
Even these last couple of summers, an increase of that in the numbers. And so that's kind of a bit of our scary stat here is the use of, and of course the effect of, but the use of social media, more regular tech in adolescents, especially.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a huge challenge. It's a huge issue. And there's been a lot written on this. What's crazy is these things are constantly changing, and the data, it takes a while for researchers to process the data and figure out what does this mean. So we know that kids have been spending more time online. We can see it, but also we can see it in the data. And so Pew Research has done some great research on this, as have other groups. And it's about half of teens say that they're online almost constantly when they're asked that question. Pew has dug into this a little more to look at specific platforms and what specific platforms are they using. And so the most common platforms this year, this was in 2023, YouTube is generally still number one among most demographic groups. And then TikTok and Snapchat. So things like Instagram and Facebook are still popular, but not quite as much as these other ones. And so looking at all of those together, 35% of teens are on at least one of them almost constantly. So, yeah, go ahead.
That sounds like a really good stat of the week.
Stat of the week.
Jake, hit us with that again.
All right. From the Pew Research Center, 35% of teens are on social media almost constantly. And that's specifically one of the big 5 platforms. And so those big 5 platforms, again, are YouTube, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook. Facebook is the lowest of those by far.
For that demographic in particular.
Yeah, for that demographic, exactly right. Yeah, if you're talking about those middle-aged people like us, it's going to be more Facebook land. Hey, that's where we are. That's a scary stat in and of itself, right?
In the article, it is. In the article last week, I called people old, and I didn't hear about it. Too bad. So that's good. So yes, thanks for that.
So here's the thing. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. You want to play the outro?
Oh yeah. That was our stat of the week, everybody.
So in my morning read, like I always have books on my bedside table and I'm reading. So the one that I'm currently reading, kind of piece by piece, chapter by chapter, is called The Chaos Machine. And it was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. It's a bestseller. It's about social media use. And it's about how social media and the algorithms for social media have leaned into the worst nature of humanity. And so that people continue to be funneled more and more towards extreme ideology and towards things that upset them and things that they find outrageous. And so the algorithms themselves are designed to get more clicks and more views. And this has been acknowledged by the people at the big companies, right? And so there's quotes from them. There's people that have left these companies. There's been congressional inquiries and things like that, but we're still learning some of these things and the consequences of these things. And it really works on adults, and it really works on young people too. And it draws them deeper and deeper and deeper into things like conspiracy theories and things like really dangerous content that they just want to watch over and over and over and over again. And it gets to more extreme versions of them to keep their eyeballs glued to it. And so it's a really scary read in that sense, speaking to our Halloween episode here. But I do recommend it to people because it talks about how social media and the algorithms have, when they're unchecked, have led to violence, not only in our country, but also in other countries, and actually precipitated like serious incidents of violence in places like Myanmar and Sri Lanka. I mean, we're talking genocide in some of these cases. And so like really dangerous places that social media can take people, and our young people are sometimes using these things unchecked. And this is a really dangerous reality for us. And some of us say, oh, but social media, there's some good things to social media.
Scary.
Yeah, I love keeping in touch with my high school friends that I haven't seen in 20-something years. And there are also some serious dangers to social media. And it can be addictive even to folks of our age and our generation, and lead people towards extremism. And so this is where, when I talk to camp people, I say we've got to figure out how to keep camps tech-free. Tech-free for our campers, but also tech-free for our staff. And so when I say tech-free for our campers, that means that if there's staff members that are using their phone and you think they're using it for like the calendar, or you're using an app of some sort to like track what's going on during the day in real time, that might be useful, but they're not just doing that. They're checking their Snapchat.
No.
They're checking their Instagram. They're watching videos. They are doing that. I know because I observed that this past summer at some of the camp visits that I went to. Oh, but staff just use it, to make sure that they're updated on the schedule. There are other ways to do that. When campers see the staff using it, campers sometimes want to use it. What's your cell phone policy, and how are you enforcing it? Because parents understand that this is a problem. Parents really do.
Yeah, they feel it.
And we ask in our survey about relation to technology and separation from technology. And this summer, brand new numbers, right, for our parent survey, almost 2,500 parents we surveyed this past summer. 97% agreed or strongly agreed with the statement, camp should be a place for young people to unplug from technology.
That's so many people. I always like picturing that in a room, right? Like so many.
It's overwhelming. It's so overwhelming that you sometimes wonder how much of the people that are disagreeing is survey error. People just clicking the wrong end of the spectrum accidentally, right? But it's at least 97%.
Yeah, that's statistically.
And then we ask the reverse question, hey, should cell phones be allowed at camp? And it's something like 5%, between 5 and 6% of parents agreeing that cell phones should be allowed at camp. And usually those are parents whose kid had a bad experience and they didn't feel like they were communicated with. We've talked about this before, but parents see the value of kids unplugging, and this is the one that they agree with the most. We've talked about this before on this podcast. I want to reemphasize it because social media is such a problem right now. Amidst all the good that it can do, it is such a challenge for our young people to stay off of the technology and stay off of social media. Camp is one of the few places in existence where they put it down for a few minutes. And I know because I talked to kids again this summer in focus groups, they love it. They love being without their phone.
Yeah.
It's not just that they love they don't love not being in touch with people or not being able to check their stuff. What they love is that nobody has it. Because if other people have it, they want theirs.
Right.
When nobody has it, that means they talk with people and they interact with people, and people look them in the eyes and they say things like that. And it was a real blessing to be out to these camps again this summer and to hear that confirmation from the young people. Because when we did the studies years ago, and I heard this in focus groups in 2015, 2016, it's like, okay, how much has this changed? It hasn't changed. Campers still understand the value, and they long for these spaces where people are putting these devices down.
Yeah. We're in this conversation that, piles of parents. All right, I've got a almost 13-year-old. He doesn't have a phone yet. And yep, he is, outside of one other kid, the only one we know that doesn't have one at that age. And the football team talked via Snapchat. And so we're there, right? So many of us, we all hit this conversation. But to your point, I don't hear, the way that it comes out, I don't hear him saying, this thing, I'm holding my phone up right now, this thing is going to be so useful for my life. I'm going to be able to make so many connections. I'm going to be able to, et cetera. I'm saying I'm the only one who doesn't. All my friends have it. All my friends use it. All my friends, whatever, right? To your point about wherever the crowd is, if it's at camp, if it's wherever it is, it is rooted there, not in, this is going to be so valuable and positive for my life.
Yep. And we have to model it. So as camp directors, program directors, we have to model it. So when we're out there and about on camp, are we constantly on our phones? Or do they see us with our phones? It's the same with our staff. If our staff see us, they're going to want their phones. If the staff have their phones, campers are going to see that and then want their phones. And so it's a cultural piece that you have to say, what are we really valuing here?
Yeah. And
we value the unplugging from technology. We know that. But I bring up these scary stats because I need you to understand that it's not just a value of let's be outside, let's be away from technology for a little while. It's not like we're shutting the TV off, right? We are separating them from something that is actually harmful to them. That's what we're talking about. This is something that we can give them, a gift of being away from these spaces and understanding that your value is not dependent on the amount of likes that you get or the reshares. That you can have fun and you can experience life in its fullness more completely when you're not on this device. That's a gift that we can give to young people at camp.
Yeah. Yeah, these are unique, important spaces that we create. That's some scary stuff, Jake.
I'm spooked out. I spooked myself out.
The whole thing.
Yep.
Yeah. You feeling spooked?
I got to go watch a Hallmark movie, I think.
All right, everyone. If you've got scary stuff, whether it's a scary story or a scary stat or whatever it is, drop it in the comments wherever you're getting this. We'll try to link a couple of these things in the show notes, Campwell and things like that. Hopefully this season's treating you well. Connect with us, sacredplaygrounds.com for all the things. And we're grateful to be in ministry and in partnership with you. Thanks for listening to the Sacred Playgrounds podcast. Thanks for listening to the Sacred Playgrounds podcast. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/sacredplaygrounds or at Sacred Playgrounds on Instagram. Be sure to hit the follow or subscribe button wherever you're getting this podcast. And if you like this content and it's helpful, you can support the podcast by clicking that support button. Our theme music was written and performed by Taylor Wilson. You can find all his original songs wherever you get your music. Learn more about what we're up to and connect with the team at sacredplaygrounds.com.